So they came in and took all that money just so that they could sit next to you while you sign a plea agreement that the DA was already set on.
It's a game. They playing with people's
It's
lives.
a game. It is, and they are playing with people. Okay, I'm gonna tell you a story. Here's a story, and here's an exclusive for you. This is the first time I'm gonna talk about this more in other places, but this is the first time I'm gonna tell this story. So myself and my partner LaRue.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we're out working, we don't call him by his given name,
Right, right,
um,
right.
um, because in 2006 he sent 10 TPD officers to prison and got 75 people out of prison that they had framed. And if that special investigation had continued, there were 25 other officers that would have been locked up or pretty damn close to it. There's about 10 or 12 of them right now that continue to operate in TPD that shouldn't be there, that they know damn good and well were part of framing people and violating people's rights
Mm-hmm.
in order
Yeah,
to,
you gave one of them a TV show.
yeah, right. So, so, uh, anyway, I got to tell you how I met him. I don't want to forget what we were talking about. What was I on? Um,
You're talking about, you know what I'm saying, as far as like you're doing time and how corrupt, how the system is wrong, how it's corrupted.
okay. Okay. So my first introduction, of course, was David, but then I had several teachers as I went through the years, and I want to name two of these guys because they never got out of prison. They died in prison. One of them more recently than the other, and they were two of the most powerful influences in my life, and I loved them with all my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna call out three of their names because one of them made it out and died the day he got out. Gary Henderson, Nur al-Din, was one of my best friends. I love that dude. He's my brother from another mother.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, he. I hate fentanyl. I fucking
Yeah,
hate fentanyl.
yeah.
He took what he thought was a Lortab. He had a lot of pain. He was pretty beat up by his age. Hard balling, man. He was a hard balling motherfucker. But he'd take a handful of Tylenol, you know, before he start playing. But anyway, the day he got out, he thought he was taking Lortab, and it had fentanyl in it, and it killed him. We didn't know nothing about fentanyl. So uh, L.R. Roberts. L.R. Roberts was a hustler and a card player and a pimp and a liar and a thief and uh, and he was also Abdul Akbar. He was also the servant of the Most Great. Um, he taught me. He was one of my boxing coaches. So in 1979, John Wayne Conley, uh, uh, Zaki, boxed his way out of the walls, signed parole over to his manager, and boxed his way to the World Boxing Championship, Budweiser Boxing Championship. And he was also one of my coaches. Well, LR was one of his coaches in 1979 when he won that World Championship, boxed his way out of the penitentiary.
Okay.
Um, so LR was also one of my boxing coaches. LR and Mahdi and Paul Rich Hassan uh, were all my boxing coach, and I had some coaching from several other people too. Um, um, anyway, I'm sorry, I get stuck in my head reminiscing thinking about them dudes, and
No,
and
you good.
and and one of my biggest teachers was a notorious buzzard in the penitentiary for years and years and years. But you need to understand, this dude went to the penitentiary when he was like 17 years old for shoplifting. He got raped. He killed the dude that raped him, and they gave him life for killing the dude that raped him. He escaped and did some heinous shit, kidnapped some people and robbed some shit, and got several hundred more years. And so he was never getting out of the penitentiary. And for a year at a time, he would be one of the most devout people you could ever meet. And then for about 6 months or 8 months, he'd fall in love with some kid. He'd be out there chasing that kid and beat up with it. And then He'd fall back in. He'd make 5 prayers a day. He'd fast. He did everything he was supposed to do, and it didn't matter if he was living life right or he was living life wrong. He
Mhm.
always did his best to try to do what was right. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, when one of the first incidents that gained me respect in the penitentiary, what was that? Okay. One of the first thing that got me any respect in the penitentiary was this. I lived on the bottom left-hand side when you walked into D unit, and on the
Mhm.
top right-hand side was a buzzard, and the buzzard was the run man. So he got to come out at night and sweep them off the floor and clean the showers and all that stuff, right? Well, they moved this kid in, the Skinner. In the penitentiary, when you first come in, they shave your head. So everybody's a Skinner when you first come to the penitentiary in Oklahoma. When you
Mhm.
get your head, that's what they're talking about. Is you got a shaved head. So this kid comes in, and I'm telling you, this kid looks like a 15-year-old little girl, shaved head and all.
Mhm.
Moved him in right next door to this buzzard, and a buzzard, somebody who preys on young boys. And I seen what was going down. He puts a buffer over in front of the kid's door before he cracks his door. He don't shut his door. When the police comes around for count, he says, I got something to do tonight. I'm gonna leave the door open. He says, okay. So he leaves it there first thing in the morning. I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I'm standing on the bottom run, drinking my coffee, smoking me a cigarette, waiting on it to happen. Sure enough, that kid comes out the door, pushes that buffer. Here comes that buzzard. Oh, you done disrespected me. You gonna have to. I said, nope, 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 nope. It ain't going down like that. He fuck that. It ain't going down like. He said, fuck you. It ain't your. I said, it is my business, motherfucker. You did it in front of me. Makes it my business. You want to keep it to yourself, keep it to your motherfucking self, but you didn't. I said, that ain't going down like that. You ain't touching that kid. He said, get your shit. I said, get your fucking shit. I'll see you on the yard. He said, get your homies. I said, get your fucking homies. I went and I got a knife. I went and told Mazoo I need a knife. He said, what's going on? I said, I got this. This ain't nobody else's problem. This ain't nobody else's business. Give me my knife. He gave me my knife. I went out on the ball field, and I was informed by security and operations after this incident that there were 43 Mexicans on the ball field and me. And because the buzzard was a Mexican.
Mhm.
And um, I, I noticed in the crowd behind me that Nur al-Din and Kwawi and and uh, and Khalil were all standing back there playing like they didn't know what was going on, strapped down, doing the a la di da la di da.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I seen them, right, and but it's me out there by myself, and their shot caller walks over to me and he says, "What happened?" And I told him, and he walked back over to the group, and two of them walked him down behind D unit, and I would have swore on a stack of Bibles that some bitch was dead halfway through that ass whooping. He got his head stomped one time, and it peeled all the hide off his bare skull halfway
Damn.
across his head, and he didn't twitch. You
Damn.
hear me? I would have swore he was dead. He wasn't dead. He's in a wheelchair for the rest of his life, and he cried and laughed for no reason and pissed and shit himself all the time. Them two dudes that beat his ass walked back up to the group, and the shot caller walked over to me and said, "Square," and I said, "Square, sir."
Mhm. Let me ask you
And
this, man, because that's a damn. That's damn.
I turned around and walked my ass off the ball field, my ass puckered up to my throat. I might have died that day, but that kid wasn't that he wasn't gonna rape that kid. Not not without having to go through step over my dead fucking body. It's just it wasn't gonna happen. I'm not built that way. I ain't never been built that way. I started fighting bullies in the 4th grade, and I ain't never stopped. I'm still doing it today.
Yeah, I was about to say, I heard that in your story. Do you feel like Oklahoma's justice system is built for rehabilitation?
Hell no. No, I became what I became because I determined for myself early on the path that I was going to take. Look, I decided that I was going to look inside myself and find everything that could bring me back to prison, because there's three things in prison that there's three things that ain't in prison that I care a whole lot about: pussy,
Mm-hmm.
driving,
Mm.
and food that's fucking edible.
That part.
All three. Very important to me. I get peace driving. I think when I'm driving. I make videos when I'm driving because I can think.
Mm-hmm.
I can think peacefully when I'm driving. My daddy said when I was a baby he would put me in the baby seat and put me in the Mustang and drive me around the block till I fell asleep. So so um uh shit, I forgot where I was at.
Your daddy putting you in the Mustang driving around.
Yeah,
We were
before
talking,
that.
we were talking about the rehabilitation.
Oh,
Shit.
okay. So yeah. So when I got my GED 6 months. That took up a lot of mental energy, right? Once I
Mm-hmm.
got my GED, though, it freed me up because I spent that 6 months I spent in the library. I didn't go to class. The teacher let me go to the library because every time I took my test that I studied for, the practice
Mm-hmm.
test,
Mm-hmm.
every time I would take a practice test, I would improve my grade. And I would go in there every couple of weeks and take a different test to see where I was at. And wherever I felt I needed to go study, that's what I would go study. And I would read books cover to cover. I would read math books cover to cover. I would read history books cover to cover. Microeconomic policy analysis, history, philosophy, existentialism, architecture, art history, marketing, market analysis. I, you name it, I was studying it. And if it interested me, I studied it with vigor.
Yeah.
And early on, I knew um, that there were, that I was fractured. I understood early on what neurosis was. Neurosis is when the parts of ourselves fight against one another and fail to integrate. When we fail to accept some part of our history or some part of ourself,
Mm-hmm.
we're not a whole person. And a house divided can't stand. That's real shit. And you have to make of yourself a whole person in order to become what it is a real man's supposed to become. And in earlier societies, before we got stuck in this artificial bubble, because this is an artificial bubble for real. If all the power went out today and it didn't come back on tomorrow, man, three-quarters of the population in this country would be dead in weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That's real shit. Real
Mm-hmm.
shit. It's an artificial world and they don't even realize it. You know, you
Right.
have to you might need to understand how to operate a computer or get on Facebook, but you need to understand how to clean a fish and how to tell a poisonous berry from something you can eat too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I applied myself to educate. And when I say educate, from educare, from the Latin, it means to bring out what is within. And I wanted to find what was, um, understand that when I was in county jail, I fasted for 30 days. I did not eat a scrap of food for 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
I drank water and tea. I prayed, I read, and I meditated. I had visions. I saw shit. And there's a difference.
Yeah, yeah,
I,
yeah.
I went through all of the above. I was offered a ministry in the church early on, and when I asked them about the first verse of the Bible, it says that Elohim, the masculine singular and the feminine plural.
Mm-hmm.
And then a few verses later, it says, "We created man in our image, both male and female created we them." I said, "Now, if this is the case, why do y'all continue? What this is saying is that God is both male and female. God is not some gray bearded dude sitting, a white dude sitting on a throne somewhere in outer space on some freaking planet a billion light years away. God is light and dark. God is up and down. God is in and out. God is the character we see expressed in the physical laws and nature of the universe. God
Mm-hmm.
surrounds us. God is us.
As
And
above, as below.
as above, so below. And they got pissed off. And when they got pissed off, I told them, you can keep your church. I'm now. I have since been reconciled uh, with Yahshua,
Mm-hmm.
Yahshua Hamashiach. I've since been reconciled because, believe it or not, we're going to go through a journey here. So while I was going through all this intellectual journey, reading Carl Jung and Freud and all the different theories and Johari's Win, all the different stuff, I studied all of it, and I didn't just read it. I studied it. I've got an 86% comprehension rate, and an IQ considerably north of 150. And um, we I studied all kinds of stuff. I had friends that I was doing we were doing psychic experiments and all kinds of stuff. So I mean, I was getting into it, and I studied Christianity. I studied all the major religions of the world. I studied Zoroastrianism. I studied Buddhism. I studied Taoism, and in my studies, um, L.R. Roberts Akbar, he says, "Have you ever read the Quran?" I said, "What's that?" He says it's the recitation. I said, the
Okay.
recitation of what? And he told me about Muhammad and how he got this vision and how it all came to him and the rough history. And I said, okay, let me check it out. So he gives me this book, and I take this book to my cell, and I had it for like a week, man. And he said, "Hey, how's it going?" I said, "Man, it's pretty cool, you know." And I'm bullshitting, and because I hadn't cracked it yet, and I was kind
Mm-hmm.
of resistant, you know, and I wasn't sure I wanted to do that, you know, and but I did. He said, "Man, I need my book back tomorrow." I said, "Okay, I'll make sure I get it back to you tomorrow." So that evening, I went home, I got on the bunk, and I opened the book up, and two verses into it, I saw clear as day where my life went left. And it was before I got to North Tulsa. Okay. When we came back from Turkey, um, I started school in Fort Rucker, Alabama. And in Turkey, when you're nice to people and you are doing good in school, you're going to be successful. So people want to be your friend.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're a decent person, when you're compassionate and kind, considerate, respectful, then there's a chance that we can be friends, right? So I went to an international school where there were American kids and English kids and German kids and French kids, kids from all over the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we all went to this one school, and um, but all my friends were really poor kids. The name they call them is Kapaji. All my friends were Kapaji, and we would play in the. I lived right next to one of the biggest open air markets in the world. It's like acres and acres and acres and miles. I think it's like square miles of market, open air marketplace. And
Mm-hmm.
I live a half a block from it. And there's this 13-year-old boy that would come every morning when we were going to get on the bus to go to school. This boy would come by and dig through the dumpsters, and he would collect stuff that he could resell or that he could eat and stuff. And come to find out, he had like 7 or 8 brothers and sisters, and his parents were dead, and he was the oldest. He was 13, and he was doing what he could to take care of his brothers and sisters. And Mama tried to give him some money, and he wouldn't take it because he wasn't a beggar.
Mm-hmm.
And so Mama, Mama would take like leftovers and wrap them up in foil, and she would take a few lira. The money over there is called lira, and like uh, that's 25 lira, like a quarter, is like bigger than a quarter but smaller than a half dollar.
Mm-hmm.
And Mama would put a handful of lira in there and put leftovers in there. And when we get to the bus stop, she'd throw it on top of the stuff in the trash, and that way it wouldn't get filthy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he would find it. Oh, he would find it, and he was always real nice to Mom. He never acknowledged that it came from her, but he was always very respectful to her and spoke to her. Over there, there's a flowery way that you talk to people, and when you're being extra respectful, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and he always, uh, he always was with my mom, and I learned from him what it means to have no choice. Even when he had nothing, he didn't have a job. I don't think he could work. I don't know why, but I don't think he could work. And like he was some kind of untouchable or something. And he still took care of all of his brothers and sisters out there every day without taking handouts, digging in the trash and finding what he could find, uh, and not depending on anybody else. And I learned from him, and he wasn't arrogant. He wasn't a dick. He wasn't rude. He wasn't. He was a nice person, and I liked him, and I called him my friend. And uh, so the way that people over there, you don't talk shit. Like
Uh-huh.
if you and I talk shit, our families fight until one of our families doesn't exist anymore. You understand?
Uh-huh.
You don't talk shit. When two men want to fight, a man takes a knife out and stabs the other man in the ass. That's how the fight starts. So I get over here and my clothes are out of date. So I'm a welfare kid and I talk funny. I spoke better Turkish than I did English. I
Right.
talk funny. So I'm a retard and I'm nice to the teacher and I'm trying to do good. So I'm a teacher's pet and a panty waist. I'm everything I can be except for, a good guy. Right.
Uh-huh.
And it's this fat kid that keeps picking on me. It's a fat white kid and he keeps picking on me and keeps picking on me and I had all I could take. Something to know in turn. Like I said, when it's time to fight, you take your knife out and you stab the other guy in the ass, and that's the beginning of the fight. You start fighting. Well, he didn't know it, but he done stabbed me in the ass, and it was on. And the Hulk was my hero back then, so I hulked out on him. I popped a button on my shirt, and I'm in third grade, right?
Yeah.
And I chased him down, I beat him up. And when the teacher pulled me off of him, I was sitting on his fat ass, beating his face up. And I got suspended. But when I came back to school, everybody was nice to me.
Earned your respect.
Everybody was nice to me. It took me 2 days to figure out. Took 2 days for me to come up with the theory from which I would operate for the next 15 years.
Yeah. Let me
Everything
ask you.
here, everything here was backward.
Yeah.
I was sitting at lunch eating an apple 2 days after I came back from school when I figured out what happened, why everybody was nice to me now. It's because everything here is backward. If you want people to be nice to you, you have to beat up people and you have to take stuff and you have to cuss and you have to steal stuff. And
Mhm.
because if you do all this stuff, people are nice to you and they like you.
That's deep how you put that. I'm glad you just dropped some jewels right there. That's real knowledge right there, like you said. Because coming from Turkey, or you know what I mean, coming from there, like it was the opposite. You know what I mean, people are more friendly. You know what I mean, it's easier
I
for
saw
you.
now I saw somebody's tongue cut out for lying. I saw somebody's hand cut off for stealing.
Right, yeah.
People
So,
behave differently there than they do here. And that came with me, you know? And so I recently found out that that's actually what that's called. When you are born in one culture and you're raised in another culture and then you experience that's called a third culture kid. And there's a bunch of us. You could be like grown up in LA and move to Ardmore. That would be a third culture kid. you know what I mean? Because it'd be completely different and it could shock you. It could make you not understand what's going on in the world like it did me. And I operated off that assumption. And that when I got to Tulsa, when I by the time I got to Tulsa, I was already trying to diddle the little girls. I was already stealing daddy's beer. I was already stealing my mama's cigarettes. I I I learned fast. Yeah.
let me ask this. You know what I mean? Like coming from your past and your background, what makes you risk your life every day? You know what I'm saying? A reputation to speak out against the wrongdoers in position of power today.
Because my mother said that that we are, and she taught me this. I want to say I want to say it was about 1982, 1983 when we were sitting on the front porch and we were working on a sculpture. My mother always encouraged me to study and to explore my creativity and my imagination, and and to accomplish as much as I could. And one of the things that she taught me that day, that there were two things she said that day that stuck with me for the rest of my life and colored every positive thing that I did for the rest of my life. And one of those things was we are all responsible for everything that we're capable of. Anything less is laziness and excuses. So that means that not only am I responsible for 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 what I do, I'm
Mm-hmm.
also responsible for what I fail to do. And as I have studied and read through history,
Mm-hmm.
as I have lived through these experiences, um, in the penitentiary, when I got to the penitentiary, I'm going to tell you, when I got there, I watched everybody. I listened. My first 3 days in the penitentiary at Connors
Mm-hmm.
were in a cell with Bulldog, the dude they welded into his cell at the walls because he killed too many police,
Mm-hmm.
killed too many people. That was my cellmate for 3 days at SNO when I got to Connors. That was my first cellmate. And he told me, big old swastika on his back, all the spider webs and all that shit. You know what
Mm-hmm.
he told me? He told me the same thing Joe Cathcart told me. He said, kiddo, you got too much going for you. He said, don't mess with them people. Don't let them pull you in. They'll ruin your life and you'll never get out of prison. That's what Bulldog told me. So
Yeah.
I get to now this blows me away. I mean, this is dude is this is the dude, right?
Yeah.
And so I get to G&J, man. That's the orientation unit on at Connors, and my first morning out, there's a steaming puddle of blood in front of RHU where a dude just got his head beat in with a 5-pound weight in a pillowcase over a pack of cigarettes, and I knew I was in prison. And so you get to the chow hall at Connors, and it's segregated. There's a white side and a black side, and um, Mexicans and Indians, they have part of the white side of the chow hall. They have their own sections, and um, at first it's too early for me to be offended by this. I'm I'm uh, I'm just trying to be aware.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So
Uh-huh.
by the time I make my stand, um, I told you I've made friends with shot callers, and and Akbar's handed me that Quran, and that moment in grade school came back to me, 2 verses into that Quran, and that convinced me that I owed Islam the opportunity to inform my life. Um, I came from a Muslim country where my godfather, who was very, 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 in Turkey, you're either very rich or very poor. And my
Mm-hmm.
godfather was very rich. He owned 13 fucking villages. He owned a diamond export company, an oil export company, and an optic company that made everything from eyeglasses to satellite lenses. And he owned 13 fucking villages. We would get in his fucking Lincoln with the flags on the corners and drive from village to village for 2 fucking days. He would go in and meet with the old man in the village and they would exchange gifts. He would
Uh-huh.
give an envelope to the old man and the old man would give an envelope to him, and they would go over the books and they'd talk about what had to be bought and what was broken and what needed fixed, and they'd make their arrangements, and we'd get back in the car and we'd go to the next one. And everywhere we went, they fed us everywhere we went. And God, Turkish food is good, man. And the men, all those old men, they're all drinking ouzo and shit, so they're getting drunk all day long. And but my dad was a mechanic on a black helicopter at the time.
Uh-huh.
When we left Turkey, we had to stop in Ansbach, Germany, for debrief because Daddy had to debrief with NATO. to talk about all the top secret shit he was seeing and doing and all that sort of stuff. And so we're all loaded in the back of the limo in the Lincoln and going village to village for 2 days. And then usually when that was over, and that was every month, we did that 2 days every month. And when that was done, we would usually go to the beach house. He had a beach house on top of a cliff overlooking the Aegean Sea. And if you went out the backside, you could dive off the cliffs there into the ocean. And if you went off the other side, you could follow a trail down to this
Mm-hmm.
private white sand beach. And we would go down there and chase sand sharks on the beach like chickens. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where I learned how to swim. That's where I snorkeled, and all the adults would be scuba diving and stuff. And I got to do a little bit. And my dad was a Cub Scout leader while we were in Turkey, believe it or not. And we
Okay.
actually got to hike through the mountains and along the coastline on this like 4 or 5 day long hike thing. And we ended at Uncle Nazif's beach house, and we camped out there on the property. There's water buffalo and goats and all that kind of stuff. And over there, you know how we have like McDonald's and quarter pounders and shit over here, over
Mm-hmm.
there, over there they have gyros. Like Arby's has a gyros.
Mm-hmm.
That's a gyro. And
Mm-hmm.
over there, that's what you eat. You eat those. You don't eat quarter pounders. You eat gyros and
Yeah.
savlaki and shish kebab and it's all lamb meat and goat meat and all that kind of stuff because they don't eat pork and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, I know. I think we had steak at the Rod and Gun Club, but I don't really remember much steak. I ate a lot of gyro. I still love them, and so uh, I don't remember how we got back over there. But back to your question about how did I see that all this stuff was messed up? So. Uh, so I start studying the Quran. I start studying with Akbar, and I took Shahada, and I became his bodyguard, and
Mm-hmm.
I was his bodyguard at 3 or 4 different yards, and he was my teacher. Him and Khalil and Zaki and Muddy Waters and um, uh, I had a lot of teachers over the years. Mahdi, big youngster, and some of those guys like. Khalil and Akbar died of a heart attack, and I believe Khalil died of cancer. And they were some of the biggest influences on understanding what's really going on. They came up in the Nation of Islam, and they were trained as fruit of Islam.
Yeah.
They were really strict, and they were strict with my studies, and they were strict with my exercise and workouts. And man, those guys turned me into a machine for a minute. I boxed while I was in prison undefeated. Um, and Akbar and Zaki were my main coaches, but I also had help from Paul Rich and um, uh, Gator and oh man, what was his name? Man, he gave me a couple of really good lists. He's a white dude, and he was a shot caller for the white. Gator was a shot caller for the white dude. Matter of fact, Gator was the co-founder of the Independent Brotherhood. Um, they were one. They were probably the last clique in the penitentiary that was really about what they said they were about. They didn't disrespect anybody. They looked out for people who came to them for help. They didn't like these cliques in the penitentiary. These white kids will go to these UABs thinking that they're going to get protection, and what they get is sucked into
Mm-hmm.
first of all a victimization cycle, and second of all into a business model. So, and I don't care which group it is, they all do this, and they can all talk shit about them not doing it, but it's bullshit. So, um, these kids will come in and they'll see they got some money or money coming in. They'll extort them, or they'll get them in debt, loan them a few soups, whatever they got to do, and they'll use them and use them up. If they decide that they can be useful to their organization, then they'll suck them in, And there's a lot of different ways that that takes place. When you hit the penitentiary, when you get to the penitentiary, you're in a sally port, and there's 10 or 15 of you in the sally port. You're in a cell with an open faced bar wall
Mhm.
usually, and there's three guys outside the cell. One of them sweeping the floor, one of them's folding clothes, and one of them's doing paperwork. Well, those guys are not there to do what they look like they're there to do. Those guys are there to get a read on every one of you, so they can go back in and tell the yard captains who's who and what's what. Who do we already know? Is there a snitch? Is there a punk? Is there a kazoo? When I say punk, I mean, like, is there somebody who sucks dick for money? Kazuni, uh, back in the day, punk that's strictly all there was to it. But as time has gone on, man, motherfuckers have gotten loose with that kind of shit. I had one motherfucker call me out, my name called me a punk, and I hit that motherfucker in the mouth before the K got out his mouth. You know what I mean? you, you, you don't let that shit slide. It's life and death shit. Because if you let a motherfucker talk to you any kind of fucking way, you'll let a motherfucker do you any kind of way.
Right.
And
Sure.
I ain't got no click. You ain't gonna do me any kind of way. I can't. So, um, they get a read on you. You get out to the yard. Are they gonna loan you a dirty book? They're gonna get you a punk. They're gonna give you some weed. Do you need a shot of dope? Um, uh, are you scared to death? Does
Yeah,
your family
whatever. Yeah.
got money? Do you got money on the books? Whatever. These motherfuckers, you got 1,000 to 2,000 people locked up on one fucking yard that ain't never going nowhere. The only thing they're getting is what comes through that fucking door.
Mm-hmm.
So it's feeding time as soon as they come through the door. And now the prison gangs have built a successful business model in collaboration with the cartels. Now, I'm not talking about traditional. I'm not talking about Bloods and Crips. I'm talking about the UABs and the Renegades and all these other new, gangs they got. These guys work with the cartels to import the fentanyl, to import the heroin, to import. There was a while there where we were shaking bottles and making that shit ourselves, but most of that shit the Mexicans are making it, and they're buying it from the Mexicans. The ice, it's taking the place of the old dope, the old shake dope and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so we're we've got our own people now. Mind you, you need to understand that the Bar Association is the one that controls policy and procedure for DOC.
Mm-hmm.
More than anyone else, the Bar Association is the one that decides what policies are going to be aimed at and which ones are going to be continued, which ones are going to be discontinued, and why. You got to remember the Bar Association. The Bar Association is in every news agency. They're in every school. They're in every courthouse. They are every judge. They are every attorney. They are every defense attorney and every prosecutor. And all of them, the judge, the prosecutor, the defense attorney, the contract lawyer, the probate judge, the GAL, the mediator, they all of them owe their practice to the Bar Association. They all owe their bar card to the Bar Association. And if they don't do what the bar wants, the bar can take their card. One of the services that the bar offers to their members is that they ensure mediation rather than prosecution when they get caught doing shit like presenting fraud upon the court. When they bring bullshit to the court and present it as evidence so that they can fuck you and either send you to court or take your shit or take your kids. And we see it get done time and time and time and time again. A lot of these defense attorneys in Oklahoma are doing nothing but trolling, looking for victims.
Mm-hmm.
Victims that they can rob blind, who can do nothing about it. They're already in a position that they can't do anything about, and you know it because they come to you and ask you for help, and you take their $6,000 or $7,000 or $10,000 and hand them over to the district attorney. It's disgusting.
So let's talk
So
about, you know what I mean? My bad. I just kind of, I don't want to
it's
go
all right.
too long on this, but you're now chief of operations at the Oklahoma Anti-Corruption Taskforce.
Yep. So
For
when I got out of prison, I started
the,
TulsaHandy.com. and I worked really hard. I got involved in DMLA. It's a young men's organization for my nephew that's sponsored by the Masonic Lodge. And they teach things like loyalty and integrity and filial piety, respecting your parents and respecting law and respecting God and respecting community and that sort of stuff, right? And so it reminded me of a time that I got to spend with people like Aldine and Kwawi and Coop. Uh, Greg Cooper was one of my closest friends, and he lives in Florida now, building motorcycles. But he came up in the life, you know what I mean? Um, he um uh damn, I brain farted. I don't know where the hell I went. You asked me what was the question?
Excuse me. It's
You
talking about,
asked me.
you becoming the chief of Oklahoma operations.
Okay, yeah. So I get out and I ran Tulsa.com, and I believe I knew better, but I got to doing speed so I could keep up with everything that I was doing. I was going to school full time, working full time, and working part time, and I wasn't trying to get high. I was just trying to keep up.
Mm-hmm.
But that turns into addiction, and before you know it, I'm doing an 8 ball a day for 6.5 years, and I had 13 strokes at one time 8 years ago on New Year's. And um, uh, when I was laying in the gurney in St. John's in the hospital, after everything I'd been through, all the stuff I'd done, and I was reducing it to this stupid shit. And God came to me clear as day, and it wasn't a voice. I'm not schizophrenic. It wasn't no crazy shit. But just as clear as day, God told me, I've been training you all your life for this job. You can either do this job or you can come home. And in that instant, I understood why I went through the culture shock I went through. I understood why I carried rocks in the sweat lodge for 6 years. I
Mm-hmm.
understood why I became a Crip. I understood why I went to a mental institute. I understood why I went to jail so many times. I understood I've been shot twice. I got more knife holes in me than I got stories for. And I have broken almost every bone in my body at least one fucking time. My nose has been broke 9 times.
Damn.
I I understood in that moment why I'd been through every bit of it. And 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 less than 6 months later, I was applying for a job at a dispensary as a bud tender, and there was a lady in there, and she was a compliance officer. They come in and check the inventory and the books and make sure everybody's doing what they're, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Well, which one is it?" I said, "The one with 15 years in the penitentiary on it." He said, "Okay." And she pops her head around the corner and she says, "Tell me more about that." It's a black lady, and she's one of those ladies you can tell when she walks across the room, people get out her way.
Mm-hmm.
They She doesn't just hold her head high. When she walks across the room, it makes you hold your head high.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She
Yeah.
she wearing gold and her hair's done, and she's wearing a nice dress with like pearls and whatever on. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
This is a respectable woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so she asked me some questions, and I answered her questions. She asked me for my card, and I gave her my card. And I get home that evening, and she called me, and we talked for about 2 hours, 3 days in a row. And that third day, the last question she asked me, and it turns out that she is the assistant to the director of the NAACP in Tulsa,
Uh-huh.
and her name is Francetta Mays, and I love her to death. She is the assistant pastor at the Vernon AME Church in Greenwood, and she was the one that brought me back to work. She that last question she asked me, she said, "Why don't we could go to all these churches in North Tulsa?" And I said, "Well, why would you stop at North Tulsa? There's a church every 2 blocks in Tulsa. Why in the hell would you stop at Admiral? You don't think there's white folks out here that think this shit ain't right? You don't think there's white folks out here that that care, that would add their voices to the struggle? You don't. And she said, how would you like to be the criminal justice chair for the NAACP in Tulsa? And I almost started crying. And I said, I've been waiting 30 years for somebody to ask me that. And um, so something to know is that at Connors in 1992 or 93, I started working with J.C. Watts Sr. before he passed away. And I don't know if you're too young to know who he is or not, but he
Mm.
was a civil rights uh, uh, he was a
Activist.
big figure. Yeah, he was a big civil rights activist in the 60s, 70s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Um, his son is now a senator, I do believe.
Mm.
Um, and Mr. Watson, myself, we started a reform package for DOC that would actually turn DOC into a real rehabilitation. It would actually train men to re-enter society in a wholesome fashion and in a whole state. Um, so the reason that people go to prison in the United States is failures in socialization. This is a, this is not just because of economy. It's not just because of a neighborhood. This is by design. Um, we know they know what they're doing. Remember, I'm going to go back to my comment about a bar member being in every school, in every church, in every news outlet, every university, every business over 100 employees. There's an attorney in there saying what you can and can't do and will and won't do and what this does and doesn't mean.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of them. There are I believe I read $4.8 billion in commerce in Oklahoma annually. If you think that those people in that organization don't use the organization, the monopolized, by the way, organization, because
Mm.
you have to apply to them to get your bar card, and you have to have a bar card to participate in their legal actions and in their courtrooms. Every piece of legislation gets reviewed by the attorneys. Every case gets reviewed by the attorneys. If you think that these people aren't setting up policy to encourage prison gang affiliation so that they can collaborate with cartels, so that they can import the fentanyl, the heroin, the methamphetamine, and export our women and our children,
Mm-hmm.
and all the money that they make, the part that's not their cut, that when the prison gang pays the cartel for the fentanyl that they bought so that they could make money on it,
Mm-hmm.
that money first, the cartel gets their cut, and then they have to pay the people they got it from. Do you know who they get it from?
Mm-hmm.
The Chinese Communist Party.
So they all in cahoots.
The Chinese Communist Party is the one that makes the fentanyl, both the precursors and the finished product. And they ship it to the cartels in Mexico and Central America, and in America, no doubt, and smuggle it into the United States, sell it to the prison gangs. I'm sure they're not their only customers, but I don't live anywhere near anybody that has the money to buy the shit that these people are putting out on the streets. These aren't poor black folks or poor Mexicans or that are putting this shit out on the streets. This is rich white folks that are putting this shit out on the streets. These are judges and cops and legislators
Mm-hmm.
who are supporting policy that encourages a prison gang to lock onto a kid doing a 5-year sentence for passing hot checks to support his drug habit and goes to prison. He gets glommed on by this prison gang because these people don't separate the prison gang members from these kids doing legitimate sentences for drug crimes and shit. So these kids get sucked into this life. They don't get a choice. These kids get sucked into this fucking life. And then when they get out, and if they survive through this bullshit that they put them through, because they put them through bullshit, I mean, they will have other cliques beat their ass. They will have their own. They will get them into shit with their own people or with some rogue, lone player. They'll pay off a motherfucker to start shit with them. They There is no end to the games that these people will play to get these people to join up with their clique. And then once they're joined up with them, they start indoctrinating them. And then as soon as they get out, dude does his 5-year sentence. He does 5 on 5 because they keep sending him on crash dummy fucking missions because they know he's getting out in 5 years. So he gets out in 5 years and he gets a phone call, says, I need you to go to this address and pick up this 10 pounds of fentanyl and take it over here to this address and drop it off. And that's their successful business model. And that's how fentanyl and heroin and most of the methamphetamine in Oklahoma is being trafficked into and through Oklahoma, and how our millions and millions and millions of dollars is being shipped out by the cartels to the CCP because our DOC policy doesn't separate the active gang members that are involved in this kind of bullshit from the people that should be doing legitimate sentences. So the system that me and JC Watts came up with eventually grew into a system where every inmate comes in and works a minimum wage job, works 40 hours a week just like anybody else. And they 40% of their earnings goes to mandatory savings, so that when they get out, they're not broke. They've got first and last month's rent. They got down payment on a car. They got money for a phone. They got money for apartment for 6 months. They can take care of themselves and do all the things they need to do till they get a job and can do better. Right? 40% of their earnings goes to room and board and restitution. That means they pay for their own incarceration. And they don't pay a profit. They pay cost. And we do across the board, fully transparent cost analysis. And they don't pay any profit. They pay straight room and board. Once that room and board is paid, they pay restitution. And that means, say I steal your car. Right now, if I steal your car and you miss 2 days of work and the insurance company gives you another car, your tax money is going to pay for me to sit in jail. You're going to pay to feed me. You're going to pay to send me to medical. You're going to pay to send me to court. You're going to pay for my attorney. You're going to pay for my transportation. You're going to pay for my clothes. You're going to pay for my food when I get to prison. You're going to pay for my schooling when I get to prison. You're going to pay for everything that goes on till I get out of their custody. Taxpayers are paying for it. Does that sound like justice? Are you there? I hope
my
you're
bad.
there.
I was muted, but I was saying no, not at all. My bad.
Okay. That's not justice, right? So John Locke in his second treatise on government, and that's one of the founding thinkers that led to the formation of the United States of America. He was one of the biggest influences. He said that the purpose and extent of the punishment is that necessary to, 1, repay what's been lost, and 2, deter them and others from committing the same crime again. Well, let's see. You're going to get in the cop for 5 years. I don't have to go to work. I don't have to do shit. I can just sit on my bunk, and in 5 years, you're going to open the door and let me out, and I don't have nothing to worry about. You're going to take care of my medical. I have nothing to worry about. So am I going to do it again? Well, let's see how it goes. Right? Let's see how it goes. So
I learned my lesson tonight.
Right? So now instead, let's say you get to prison, you're working a minimum wage job, and now I have to pay you back. I also have to pay you back for the 2 days of work that you missed, and I have to pay you back for the rental car that you had to rent for 2 days, and I have to pay the insurance company back for the car that they had to buy you because I stole your car. And once I get that paid, I can go up for parole. That's the purpose and extent of punishment, is to keep me from doing it again and to repay you for what you lost. That's justice, right? So instead of innocent taxpayers who didn't commit a crime paying for all my time in prison and all that shit and all the wee woeing and all that tough on crime bullshit that they try to feed people because prison's so, prison's what they fucking make it. Prison could be university. Under our system, they separate the prison gang members have their own yard. They're on level one. If they want to continue to participate with that bullshit, they can stay in there and do their time day for fucking day. We'll track them when they get out. And when they get ready to come back, we'll bring them back. We'll see if we can wipe them out. That's that. If they want to live that fucking dumbass life, that's what they can do. But if you fucked up, if you had drug affiliation, if you caught a case for stealing a car, or somebody tried to do you in and you caught a shooting case, you know what? But you want to change your life. Yeah, it's not the life you want to live. You want to you maybe you met somebody or you want to meet somebody and raise a family, right?
Mm-hmm.
So instead, when you get to prison, you go to work a minimum wage job. You're learning how to build packaging for transmissions so that they can be shipped internationally. Believe it or not, that's actually a real job, and people doing those kind of jobs make 20 to 40 fucking dollars an hour doing that kind of packaging, man.
Mm-hmm.
We these jobs that we send out of the country, we don't send jobs out of the country that are minimum wage jobs. We send jobs out of the country that are $80 an hour jobs because we don't want to fucking pay $80 an hour. So we send it to some kid out, in a country that he's making $8 an hour and he thinks he's fucking living high on the hog, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to bring those jobs back, which is something Trump's been talking about, right? So to bring
Mm-hmm.
those fucking jobs back, put them in prisons. Put them in prisons and pay them minimum fucking wage. Charge these companies $1 over minimum wage for every fucking hour. And that way we use that $1 over to manage the money, and that minimum wage goes to the inmate. 40% of his earnings goes to savings. That savings accrues interest because
Uh-huh.
when you got 7,000 inmates accruing interest on their savings, that's a lot of fucking money. Well, that's money that can be used for programs to enrich the inmates'
Mental.
rehabilitation.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So under our system on level two, when you come in, you can wear your own shoes, but you have to wear prison clothes. You have 10-minute movement on the yard. You can only check out books from the library that are for school or for work. You can't have any entertainment stuff. When you get to level three, you can have your own shirt and you can have a radio. You can check out music from the library. You can check out entertain books that you read just for your own entertainment. You can go attend movies in the library on the weekend or what have you, right? um, when you get to level four, you can have a TV in your room, you can check out DVDs, you have free movement on the yard. But on level four, you become part of the staff, and your job is to improve the program and help people get better. So for level two, you have two self-help programs every week, say AA and family therapy, right? On
Uh-huh.
level three, you have three programs every week. And on level four, you have four programs every week. On level four, you can wear a fucking suit and tie if you want to. You can wear whatever you want to wear. On level four, you have nearly paid off all of your restitution. All of your bills are paid and you have savings set up. And you've already built a resume and you're looking at jobs out on the street. Yeah, it's what we do is socialize people who have we have failed to provide the proper socialization for, and
Mm-hmm.
we do it at the inmate's expense instead of the innocent taxpayer's expense. That's $629 million year before last. That is money that could have been spent for actual free choice education for every Oklahoma student, not just those rich enough to afford a tax rebate at the end of the year.
Yeah. So before we wrap this up, I got two more questions I want to ask you.
Yep.
When you look back at your journey, you know what I'm saying, from being introduced to the Cribs, 15 years in prison, to being chief of operations, what's the biggest lesson that life has taught you?
I go back to the two things my mama told me that rainy day on that front porch. working with the clay. She said the difference between an ordinary life and an extraordinary life is paid in attention. If you're not paying attention, it doesn't matter what goes on in life. You're never going to be happy. You're never going to feel fulfilled. You're never going to feel rich, no matter how much you have or where you go or what you do. The difference between an ordinary life and an extraordinary life is paid in attention. And she also said, we are all responsible for all that we are capable of. Anything less is laziness and excuses. Miss Francetta Mays mm, made me made me the criminal justice chair for the NAACP in Tulsa. I was the first Caucasian to ever hold that position in the state, and um, it was an invaluable experience. Um, I learned. Now, the reason I didn't go back to the NAACP after some stuff went on is because you have your hands tied. As a member of the board of NAACP, you can't participate in cases. You can't recommend any strategies or tactics. There's a whole list of things you can't do as a member. And I believe it's my honest opinion that at least in Oklahoma, the organization has been hobbled until we get people in like Francetta Mays that are willing to fight, that are willing to stand up against hypocrisy and lies and fight the battles. Um, we they're not going to do us any good. So at the end of that, now while I was a criminal, while I have to tell you this story, this has got to work it in there. So while I was the criminal justice chair for the NAACP, there was a lady that said she wanted me to review a case, but she wanted to bring a guy with her, a guy from prison or a guy that had done some time in prison and knew some stuff about the law. So I said, okay, yeah, just come on down. We'll meet out here at the Rudisill Library in North Tulsa. We met at the library, and this little bitty, I, I'm, I love this dude with all my heart. My brother from another mother. I would take a bullet from him for him in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's like, I want to say 5'3", right? 5'2", 5'3". He's real short, bald
Mm-hmm.
black head, and he's real dark and real clean, um, real smart. And so we get down, we're talking about this case and pointing out stuff. And he says this, and I said that. And I don't know it, but he's testing me. This is LaRue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So LaRue and his two brothers founded Blood Gang in Tulsa in 1986. In 1986, do you remember what was training day? You remember that? You remember when old boy walked over to Denzel and he said, "We put our own work in around here, homie," and handing him the
Mm-hmm.
gun?
Mm-hmm.
That dude's a real blood. Okay,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the dude that played in the movie,
Yeah.
he's the one that came from Phoenix to Tulsa to put them on.
Mm.
You hear me?
You gave me some history, yeah.
Yeah. So he's the one that put them on, and LaRue, he was part of that until he went to he. So they got indicted because they owned a couple of shopping centers in North Tulsa,
Mm-hmm.
and they was doing the damn thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? They was serving,
Yeah.
and they was putting their work in, and they got indicted, and he got indicted. He had to do some Fed time. When he got to federal penitentiary, he decided he wasn't going to go pick up weights. He's going to pick up books. And this dude is brilliant. He was a drum captain at McLean. He was in all honors classes. He took martial arts. He was an overachiever. He has leaned into life his whole life, just like me. Um, uh, I look at him as a mentor. He's a few years older than me, and I knew a lot of people that grew up like up under him, um, but I didn't know him growing up. It was at the Rudisill Library with him testing me over this case that I started getting to know him. And we
Mm-hmm.
started working together on these cases and stuff. And he kept teaching me stuff, and we would go to the law library, and he'd have me read through these cases and read through the actions that we're taking. And we started helping people with their cases. We founded this thing called Oklahoma Advocacy Legal Assistance, Oklahoma ALA, OKLAL, and we had an office on Greenwood. And we in the course of 3 years, we either diverted or completely got dismissed 22 cases.
Yeah.
We got handed our ass on two cases, and one of them was the bar association letting us know that we were not going to interfere with how they decided to put things. And that was in Clifford Smith's courtroom. Clifford Smith's actually one of the judges that I appreciate more. Um, I think there's too much ex parte arrangements taking place out of that courtroom. But uh, I think that cases get decided by a judge that are supposed to be decided by other people. Um, but I trust his ethics most of the time, except for the fact that these some bitches are trading people for trading cases. I'll give you this one and you give me that one, and that's not justice. That's the bar association enriching itself and insulating itself, increasing its power so that they can continue to increase their market share. So LaRue has taught me a lot about law and about history. He was a criminal justice chair for the NAACP in Tulsa years before I was. I ended up calling out the crooked president here in Tulsa and exposing him, and he got unseated. And there was a bunch of stuff that went on in the vacuum behind all that shit. And but he'd been doing the NAACP in Tulsa dirty for decades, for decades. Um, Horrible, horrible shit. And every time somebody like LaRue or one of the Miss Love or Miss Love tried, I love that woman. Miss Love will call them out in a heartbeat and call them what they are and tell them like it is. And you know how these old black women are when they just start breaking one off for real. And I love watching her go off on them, boy. And she'd go off on Playas. Playas was something else. Um, uh, I had a couple of people who had a long crooked history try to share history with me for a while. So I learned a lot about the politics in and around the courtroom and in and around Tulsa early on when I started getting involved. But all of that waking up and all that coming back and all the fighting I've been doing, on the back end of my 13 strokes, everything that I had been through, all those experiences and all that stuff I had learned from, all of it made sense. It was all so that I could take on the mission that Miss Francetta Mays was calling me to, so that I could learn what I needed to learn there to move on to do what I'm doing now. And we did ALA for a while until we had a lunatic. And I know that anybody that's been doing things like interviews and doing serious work around this stuff, you run into people who are not balanced, who don't have pure motives. And we had one that got involved with us, gave us a little bit of money, and said they wanted to help, and they came in and sabotaged and sabotaged and sabotaged, and we headed off a bunch of the bullshit that they had done, and um, minimize the damage. But we had to shut down ALA, shut down that office. We moved our office. We moved out to West Tulsa, and we ended up letting go of our office, our brick and mortar office. And now we work out of our vehicles and out of our homes. We don't get paid to do what we do. We've had a few people give us a little bit of money, for helping them, but we don't really get paid for what we do. We put I work two part-time jobs so that I have a little gas money so that I can go listen to people tell me about their case and go through their paperwork and make copies. And copies ain't cheap, man. And that's another thing. They make this process as difficult. And there's a thing called specialized language. Every skill set, whether you're a mason or an electrician or a plumber, has a specialized language. And a specialized language is designed to both increase understanding between participants and exclude understanding from people who are not union members, let's say. It
Mhm.
started back in the guilds. It started in the guilds when carpenters taught carpenters how to be carpenters, not Votex, right? And
Mhm.
um, and you would pass on these special languages when you would say, square the circle, or there's special, these things mean things to these people and not to other people. Well, that's the same thing with the legal field. The bar association creates a specialized language intentionally so that people who aren't privy to their special language can't understand what's being said or done, and it's done intentionally so that they can exclude people who aren't bar members from participating in their thievery.
All right, so before we wrap this thing up, and I appreciate you, bro, for real, because I mean this
Yeah,
is a good one. I'm gonna turn this into a two parts. I'm gonna chop this one
I
down.
figured you'd probably chop this up because we got a bunch of shit in
But
there.
I know you say you do everything. Y'all do everything from the heart, man. Y'all not really getting no pay for what y'all work. But
Yeah.
for those who want to help, you know what I mean, those who may want to support or follow, any type.
Okay. So Oklahoma Anti-Corruption Taskforce is a very large organization. We have a small group of people at the center that know who most of the groups involved are, but we've got members who are legislators. We've got members who are in law enforcement. We have got members who are bar card holders, which with my strength of rhetoric surprises me sometimes. When you go look at my TikTok, uh, Robert Mann, or my Facebook, 90% of my stuff is calling out the bar. The This country has been hijacked by special interests across the board, crossing party lines. The two-party system was a threat that our founders warned us against because it makes division so fucking easy. They told us that if we had a two-party system, we'd be fucked. We've got to either create more parties or we've got to wipe out the parties. Either there has got to come a point where people either run on their own fucking merits, or we've got to have more fucking parties. We need a constitutionalist party. We need and these people say the Constitution don't work. You sons of bitches have never put the Constitution into effect to see if it fucking works. They've never done it. if they
Mhm.
do it, if they do it, they'd see the brilliance in the design. There is an aspect of our socioeconomic construct that a lot of people. I'm a capitalist. I believe in capitalism. I believe that in competition. I do, but there is nothing in nature that exists without limits. Everything in nature is put in check by something. The only and and by the way, economies are invented, are created, are designed by us to serve us, to increase our safety, our security, and our expression, so that
Mhm.
we can express what it means to be humans and reach out. And that's we discovered everything on the planet, and then we went in the oceans, we went into space, and we're trying to reach out further now. And that's what we're meant to do as human fucking beings. That's our fucking purpose. If it wasn't, it wouldn't be born in us the way it is.
Mhm.
And for these people have put us in a position to serve an economy instead of the economy serving us. They have created an unnatural state that allows a select few to move through, and because of our system, move through our system in such a fashion that they become inordinately more powerful than the rest of us because of the depth and breadth of their resources. There is no reasonable fucking reason for anybody to be making more than, let's say, $3 fucking million a year, right? Personally, there's no fucking reason for it. None. I understand a company is thousands of people together, but at some point, we should be stepping in. I don't like the idea of calling it taxes. At some point, there has to be a financial arrangement where there's a ceiling on how much money a person can make in a year, because it's not natural for just a handful of the greediest, most fearful people. And that's what greed is, rooted in fear. That's a whole nother show, and we can talk for hours about that. Um, Greed is rooted in fear. These people are the ones most terrified of death. These are the ones most terrified of being poor. These are the ones most terrified of having nothing or having no power. And that's why they fight as hard as they do to gain what they gain. You get what you ask for. You knock and it's fucking opened. You ask and it is answered. That's the nature of life. Whatever you spend your life and your time making space for, nature will fill that fucking space with that thing. If you're a fucking crackhead, you're going to find some crack. If you're a pervert, you're going to find a victim. If you're drunk, you're going to find a drink, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's that way with everything in life. If you're a money junkie, you're going to find some money. Um, it's just how it is. But at some point, we have got to create both a ceiling and a floor. There has to be a minimum standard of living. There has to be a low beyond which we don't let people slip. Um, I don't think that anybody should sit on their ass and receive a check. If you've got one eye and 1 foot and 3 fingers, there's something you can fucking do. You can answer a phone and go, nobody's home, and hang up. You know, I mean, there's fucking something you can do. Everybody needs to be participating in the experience that is the human species. We got to work together to get off this fucking rock, man, and live on more than one planet. Because if we don't, we're 10,000 years overdue for an extinction level event. We are 10,000 years overdue from resetting fucking humanity again.
Mm-hmm.
We
No,
got to
you're
get
right.
off. we got we got to come up with a plan B, and we got to work hard, and it takes all of us. Every human being on the face of this earth has got some part of the key to the survival of our species, every one of us. And it is imperative that we have each one of those keys.
Yeah, because it's in us. We just got to come together.
Yep, absolutely. I I became a Crip when I was a teenager, and the dude that is closest to me today that I would take a bullet for right now, he was one of the founders of Blood Gang. And we
Yeah.
work together day in and day out. We have faced dirty judges. We have gotten a sheriff and an undersheriff removed. We're working on a couple of mayors who are working for gangs. We're working on several district attorneys. We're working on another sheriff. Um, these people that think that they can do whatever they want to do and not be held accountable, that's not what the Constitution says. That's not what the Declaration and the Constitution. And there's another thing that people don't get to hear about unless they get really into politics, and it's called the Federalist Papers. And everybody in America, especially if you care anything at all about politics and you want to be right and on the right side of anything, you need to read the Federalist fucking Papers. You need to read the Federalist Papers. And when we interpret the Constitution today, we want to interpret it with the best possible interpretation. If it says all men are created equal, we don't want to go back and go, well, they didn't mean fuck what they meant. If it says all men are created equal, all fucking men are created equal, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's how we want to interpret the Constitution, because in God's providence, in the providence of the universe, and I can sit and argue atheism to a believer and a belief to an atheist, and I don't have a problem with either language, because that's all they are. One is the language of reason, and one is the language of intuition. That's it. There's only one religion, and it's been given by God to humanity a time and time and time and time and time again. Yet one time it comes with a star, and one time it comes with a cross, and one time it comes with a triangle, and it don't, none of that shit matters. There's a golden string that passes through all of it, and that string is the fucking truth. And that truth is the same whether you're looking at a cloud or you're looking at a leaf or you're looking at your child. Everything in the fucking universe works the same way, and that same way is the face of fucking God.
Like I said, man, I want to say thank you for your time, bro. I want to say thank you
Yep.
for your story. And to be honest, I mean, I feel like you got a lot. I can hear it. You got a lot you want to get off. You know what I mean? But we're going to have to schedule that for part 3 and part 4.
Whenever, Bubba, whenever. I'm down.
Like I said, I appreciate
Man,
it.
I live a life of service. I really believe what my mother taught me, and since I had my strokes 8 years ago, I look for what God sets me to do every day. I'm raising a family. I got 2 teenage boys that are about to be men. One of them will be 18 in less than a month, and one of them will be 17 in less than a month. And when I'm a stepdad, and when I got these boys, they were 3 and 4, and they were feral. They were bay ass, buck wild. I mean, I'm talking about I busted that ass every day for like 2.5 years straight, and should have done it 3 times a day. But now I haven't had to lay a finger on either one of them boys in like 7 or 8 years. They ain't uh uh they make the right decisions for the right reasons. When they make a mistake, it's an honest mistake. They take responsibility for the behavior. They ain't scared of shit. Neither one of them. They will stand toe to toe with a grown man and take an ass whooping and stand back up and say, I still meant it.
Yeah,
I'm so proud of them. Um, uh, we all got to work together, man. We have got to work together. It's going to take all of our wisdom and all of our effort to allow our children to live in a world that allows their children to live in a world that allows their children to live in a world that sees humanity survive long enough for the thoughts that we are developing today to be finished and come to a conclusion, and perhaps unfold into something that makes the meaning of our lives last an eternity that has more meaning than time.
that's right.